From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Aylia Batool. A new Heritage Foundation plans seek to wipe out pro-Palestine activism in the U.S., backing deportation and defunding schools. This and more in today's show. Israeli forces opened fire at a foreign diplomatic delegation at the entrance of Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank, according to a Palestinian official. Palestinian Foreign Ministry aide Ahmed al-Diq said the shooting was meant to intimidate and block entry. Israel admitted firing what it called warning shots after the group allegedly deviated from a pre-approved route. No injuries were reported, and the Israeli army said it regretted the incident and would brief diplomats on its findings. The EU's foreign policy chief called for a full investigation. Meanwhile, Spain's Catalonia region announced the closure of its Tel Aviv trade office. EU Vice President Teresa Ribera likened the Gaza crisis to genocide, criticizing the bloc's sluggish response. Israel has killed more than 969 Palestinians in the West Bank since October 2023. At Columbia University's commencement on Tuesday, Acting President Claire Shipman was repeatedly interrupted by chants of Free Mahmoud. She was also booed and jeered, forcing her to pause multiple times. Students protested her handling of Free Palestine demonstrations on campus and the Trump administration's efforts to deport student activist Mahmoud Khalil, who is a Columbia graduate. Khalil, a lawful U.S. resident, was arrested in March and remains in Immigration and Customs Enforcement detention in Louisiana. He is accused of leading protests against Israel's genocide in Gaza. In a letter from prison, Khalil called himself a political prisoner, punished for free speech. He blamed Columbia's past and present leadership for enabling his arrest by cracking down on Free Palestine voices and tolerating racist online targeting. Shipman recently invited police onto campus to remove students occupying a library. She later retracted claims that outsiders were behind the protest. The controversy has deepened tensions on campus as the university faces growing backlash. In a Senate hearing on Tuesday, U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem wrongly defined Habeas Corpus as a presidential power to remove people from the country. Senator Maggie Hassan immediately corrected her, saying it is the legal right to challenge detention and demand a public reason for imprisonment. Hassan reminded Noem this core protection is what separates free societies from police states. Noem later said she supports Habeas Corpus, but claimed the president has the authority to suspend it. Hassan pushed back, saying no president has done so without Congress. Even Abraham Lincoln received retroactive approval. The exchange comes as President Donald Trump's advisor Stephen Miller says the administration is considering suspending Habeas Corpus as part of its immigration crackdown. 2 Asian immigrants have been deported from Texas to South Sudan by U.S. immigration officials, violating a federal court order. The men, who are from Burma and Vietnam, were awaiting immigration hearings when lawyers were suddenly informed of their removal. By Tuesday morning, both were on a plane with 10 others, heading to the war-torn African nation. An Immigration and Customs Enforcement or ICE officer confirmed the destination after one lawyer could not locate her client in the detention system. A federal judge earlier barred the Trump administration from deporting migrants to third-party countries without due notice, especially to places facing humanitarian crisis. The emergency order was issued in a separate case involving deportations to Libya. So far, the Department of Homeland Security has not responded to the allegations of violating due process and defying the court's directive. An influential U.S. conservative group is pushing a sweeping plan to eliminate Free Palestine activism across America. The Heritage Foundation, which is behind the controversial Project 2025, has launched Project Esther, a campaign aimed at removing all forms of support for Palestine from universities, Congress, and public discourse. The New York Times reports that the plan labels many critics of Israel as part of a terrorist support network. Foreign students involved in Free Palestine protests face expulsion and deportation. Heritage officials say many of its proposals are already being implemented under President Donald Trump's second term, including defunding universities and deporting activists. Observers warn that Project Esther blurs the line between dissent and terrorism, threatening free speech. Even some Jewish groups have raised alarms over the extremism driving this campaign. Israel's relentless bombing of Gaza has killed at least 82 Palestinians and wounded 262 in the past 24 hours, Gaza's health ministry reports. Since dawn on Wednesday, 42 people have been killed, including 24 in Khan Yunis, 14 from one family. Israeli strikes also hit the Nasser hospital compound for the third time. Doctors Without Borders has warned that Gaza's healthcare system is being crippled deliberately, with more than 20 facilities damaged in a week. Israel is also accused of blocking aid. The UN says no supplies have been distributed due to severe restrictions. Meanwhile, Israeli protesters have blocked Garam Abu Salam crossing, the only entry for aid, demanding all relief be halted. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert called his country's actions very close to a war crime. At least 53,655 Palestinians have been killed and 121,688 wounded in Israel's genocidal war on Gaza since October 2023, the health ministry said Wednesday. However, a report in the medical journal The Lancet in January put the number of Palestinians killed by Israel at over 64,000. Turkey's first astronaut-tested bee-made propolis in space finds it may beat antibiotics against some bacteria. This and more coming up next. An Israeli warplane killed a one-day-old infant while targeting the home of Al-Kahlut family in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. The bodies of those killed and the injured were transported to Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in the city. On Sunday, the Israeli army announced the beginning of a broad ground offensive in the war-torn region. King's College Cambridge in the UK has announced it will cut all financial ties with the arms industry and companies linked to Israel's occupation of Palestine by year-end. It is the first Oxbridge institution to divest under pressure from student activists. The decision follows nearly a year of sustained protests by the group King's Cambridge for Palestine, backed by the wider Palestinian solidarity movement. The college confirmed the move in an email to students from Provost Gillian Tett after a governing body vote. Campaigners hailed the decision a major win and urged Cambridge University and others to follow suit. The Palestinian Solidarity Campaign says UK universities still invest approximately $618 million in companies complicit in Israel's occupation and apartheid. The group's student officer Stella Swain calls it a massive victory for student activism and said more institutions must now act to stand on the right side of history. Civil rights groups say Texas is targeting Latino communities with politically motivated charges to suppress civic participation. 6 Latino Democratic officials in Frio County are facing prosecution for helping elderly voters with mail-in ballots during the 2022 election. The indictments, pushed by Attorney General Ken Paxton, include a county judge, city council members, and a former elections official. They are being charged under Senate Bill 1 Texas's strict 2021 voting law that criminalizes traditional forms of voter assistance with heavy penalties. Civil rights groups argue these prosecutions are not about fraud, but fear. They say they are designed to intimidate Latino voters and criminalize decades-old community practices like translation help and providing rides to polls. Mail-in ballot rejections have spiked in Latino-majority counties since SB 1, with rejection rates hitting more than 20% in some areas. Advocates say it is a clear attempt to roll back Latino voter gains and discourage participation in future elections. Pakistan has promoted Army Chief General Asim Munir to the rank of Field Marshal, the second in the country's history. The decision, approved by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's cabinet, comes after Munir's leadership during the recent military standoff with India. That began on May 6th, when India fired missiles into Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. This was after a deadly attack on April 22nd in Indian-occupied Kashmir, which killed 26 people. India blamed Kashmiris and Pakistan for the attack, which both denied involvement in. Islamabad responded to India's missiles on May 10th, striking 26 Indian military targets. A U.S.-mediated ceasefire later helped cool tensions between the nuclear-armed neighbors. General Munir dedicated the rare honor to Pakistan's martyrs, armed forces, and people. The only other Pakistani to hold the Field Marshal title was former military ruler Ayub Khan in 1959. The cabinet also extended the term of Air Chief Marshal Zahir Ahmad Babar. The head of the UN's International Fund for Agriculture Development, or IFAD, says fighting rural poverty is critical for global food security. IFAD President Alvaro Lario told the Islamic Development Bank's annual meeting in Algiers this week that 80% of global poverty is found in rural areas. Citing the Islamic Bank's $500 million support for Nigeria's agro-processing zones, Lario said such projects can fight food insecurity and boost fragile economies. He stressed that transforming rural economies is vital for job creation, climate resilience, and sustainable development. Lario highlighted that many developing countries rely on agriculture, with more than half their workforce in food production. He called for more investments and innovation, especially in agro-processing, marketing, and exports. A space experiment by Turkey's first astronaut has revealed that Propolis, a natural resin made by bees, may be more effective than antibiotics against certain bacteria. The findings came from a student-designed study conducted by astronaut Alper Gazarovski aboard the International Space Station during his mission from January 19th to February 9th last year. The experiment, created by middle schoolers at Mus Science and Art Center, showed that Propolis worked especially well against gram-negative bacteria. Some strains responded equally to both Propolis and antibiotics. Supervising teacher Bersen Getcher said the goal was to test Propolis in microgravity and identify bacteria aboard the space station. She noted the results could lead to new treatments and help protect astronauts' health. A powerful collection of stories titled Heart Lamp has won the 2025 International Booker Prize. Written by Indian attorney Banu Mushtaq and translated by Deepa Bashti, it is the first short story collection and first book translated from Kannada to win the prize. Kannada is spoken predominantly in the state of Karnataka in southwestern India and has 44 million native speakers. The stories explore the lives of Muslim women and girls in southern India, touching on themes like caste, class, faith, reproductive rights, and oppression. The tales span 3 decades and reflect real-life struggles drawn from Mushtaq's work with women as a lawyer. Bashti called her style English with a Kannada hum, aiming to preserve the cultural essence of the original language. Judges praised the collection as genuinely new for English readers. The prize, worth more than $67,000, is shared equally between the author and translator. Heart Lamp beat 154 entries to claim the award, earning global attention for India's regional literature. That's all from our Toronto studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.